This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to Purpose-Driven Sobriety. Thank you for joining Purpose-Driven Sobriety, the podcast. I want to thank today's sponsor, the sweetest friend, one of the sweetest friends I have, Ms. Kate Holcomb, who owns Modern Media. If you are in need of anything marketing-wise, please check out Modern Media. And Kate Holcomb, I love you. Thank you for being a supporter for us in recovery. We're very, very grateful. So today, we have Miss Gina on to tell her story of experience, strength, and hope. And Gina, first of all, welcome. I'm so grateful that you decided to join me today.
Thank you so much.
Well, you and totally my pleasure. You and I have a mutual friend. Well, she's a family member of yours, Miss Rachel, who was on several episodes back. She's just an absolute gem, a doll, and she introduced you and I. Like I said, I'm just so grateful that you have decided to come on and be with me today. So, girl, on this show, we just simply share our experience, strength, and hope. It ain't nothing but a thing. We just, tell people like it is, how it was, and what happened, and what we're like now, just to try to reach that person who's still suffering from the disease of addiction. So, I'm gonna step aside, girl, and you just give me all the things. Tell me about you.
Oh my goodness! I thought you were gonna ask me questions.
No, ma'am. You give me your story. Tell me all about you. What was it like?
Well, I'm old.
Oh, stop it. No, she's not. She's gorgeous.
I'll try to shorten this story as much as possible.
Girl, you got an hour.
I'm sure that I was born an addict and an alcoholic. I definitely present or identify as an alcoholic because I have all the alcoholic traits. Mm-hmm. I drink alcoholically. I shop alcoholically. I eat alcoholically. I used to take men alcoholically.
Let's put a pause on that for a second, because I know that a lot of people have no clue what it means to be alcoholic but not be drinking. So why don't you shed some light on that for us? Tell us what does that mean? I shop alcoholically. I eat alcoholically. So tell the person who doesn't have any clue what that means. What does that mean?
Well, one is never enough. One is too many, rather. 1,000's never enough. Mm-hmm. I'm never satisfied.
Well, there you go.
With just one. There's Perfect. An empty hole. I have to continue. It's just I'm always looking for relief. It's temporary,
right?
And I didn't know what I didn't know till I knew it. I'm an only child. I was born in the 60s. My dad had one car. He was at work. My grandma was with my mom when she went into labor. And my grandma called my mom and said, "Billy, Gina's having the baby," and hung up. And my dad went to the hospital. We were still home, so I was born at home.
Wow.
My grandma delivered me. And my dad was 17. My mom was 21. Then my dad joined the service. So he was in Vietnam. And my parents didn't make it. Their marriage didn't last. And my mom, she was going to raise me differently than her parents raised her,
right.
Which was really a strict, abusive background. And, if she was late for 5 minutes, she was grounded for the summer, things like that. And my mom had a very codependent relationship with me. There was no separation. There was no boundaries. I had no boundaries. I didn't have bedtime, nothing, and I slept with my mother. I bathed with my mother till I was 12. And she's like, "Gina, you're just too big to fit in the bathtub with me."
Oh, wow.
My mom was my running buddy, ultimately.
So how old were you when they got a divorce?
I mean, they weren't really together while he was in Vietnam for 4 years. By the time I think the divorce was finalized, I was 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
So I remember little bits of my dad being there, but we were, moving around a lot, military-wise. I'm from Queens, Long Island. Nassau County was where I left. I was born in Queens, raised in Queens. Just running the streets, seeing older people drinking and doing drugs. And I'm like, I'm never going to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I was 12, I knew my mom was partying. And, my uncles, which are rather close to my age, 2 years older, were like, "Well, your mom's not going to be mad." And I was smoking weed and drinking in the bathroom, and then coming out and noticing my mom wasn't mad, and that's really what started me using at home. But the first time I drank, I blacked out. I threw up, and my friends dragged me home and rang the bell, and I couldn't wait to do that again. So I've been alcoholic since 1978, and then whatever came after that was fashionable at the time. I was like, wow, what happened to Gina? I really took that and ran with it. And I'm one of those that have tried everything to get sober. I moved. I've been married 5 times. I have 3 children by all different dads. Matter of fact, they're born in different decades. And I've been in the service. I was in the Army.
Thank you for your service.
Great starter of everything, finisher of nothing. I was a graphics artist. I, started college for different things a lot of times. So I spent a lot of, by the time I was 33, I must have been in 100 rehabs. I was in one detox 29 times.
Oh, wow.
The only reason I didn't go back is because they financially closed their doors.
Oh, really?
But everywhere I went, I brought me. I didn't know that. I didn't know the problem was drugs and alcohol. I didn't have an answer for what was wrong with me. I got addicted to heroin. I smoked crack once for 5 years.
Wow.
I didn't put that down until I found heroin, and I liked it. I thought everybody should try it once. My greatest last idea, I guess, was to move to Florida. I've been here since 2004, and I was like, well, I'll never find crack and alcohol in heroin, and that's just that wasn't the case. Love was never enough. Detox was never enough. If detox works, I would have been sober in 1984. My kids banging on the sliding glass door, Mommy, don't go. I couldn't see past the next one. I had to go. It was an obsession and a compulsion that I felt that I needed to satisfy. So even though I heard them crying in the background, I told them I would be right back. And I didn't know if I'd be back in an hour, a day, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months.
Tell me about that. Let's go back to the first time that you decided to, or that you knew you needed a detox, or you need. When was the first time you sought help? Tell me about that time. Whether it be voluntarily or you were made to seek help.
It's a really long story, but the very first time I was introduced to treatment, I was 23. I was pregnant. I had a son that was born positive tox for alcohol, heroin, and crack. And I used until I went to the hospital. I kept denying that. I guess I didn't think the baby was coming. It was Labor Day, September 4th, 1989, sorry. That was the first time I went to detox. I had been in and out of the rooms, but I didn't think I belonged there. They were too happy. It was cultish. I thought if you had my problems, you wouldn't be this happy.
We were just talking about that in a meeting today, and that's that. What is it? What is the term we use? Terminal uniqueness. Because I can remember I mentioned in a meeting this morning with my women. I can remember going into the room, and these people were laughing and cutting up, and I thought there is no way that you're as bad as I am, or you wouldn't have anything to laugh about. I didn't, just like you said, I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew it. I had no clue that that's what recovery looked like, that they were actually having productive, air quote, normal lives, and were able to laugh at now that they were past things. But I was still down so deep into the darkness that I couldn't find a single thing to laugh about. So I totally get what you're saying. Get what you're saying. Oh, yes.
I was loitering with no intent to recover. It was submission. I was doing it for everybody else at that time, and I was suicidal.
So you didn't know, did you consider yourself an addict or anything at the time? No. Okay. Got it. Yep. I didn't either. I
knew something was wrong. But when I had my son, they didn't really have detox. I don't know. Detox wasn't a big thing back then. And I was put in a psych ward. I was put on, different kinds of medication. And, when I finally got this substances out of my system and I wanted my son back, I walked him to a Child Protective Services car, and I strapped him in, and they carted him off to foster care. He was a couple of days old, and my mother at that point stopped using drugs. She was drinking beer. Nobody knew that beer was acceptable. My mother went to court and fought to get custody of my son. And I think he was 10 days old, and she did get temporary custody. The court ordered me to day treatment, and I was gung-ho. But I remember them bringing meetings into the treatment center, and I was laughing. I didn't raise my hand and say, hi, I'm Gina, I'm an alcoholic. I had fun. I met guys. I was still very selfish and self-centered, very self-interested. But I thought that I was doing the right thing at the time, and I managed to graduate that program in 10 months. And I went before the court, and the judge said, Ms. Arnold, I don't grant crack mothers back their babies, but I'm going to give you custody back. And I got custody of them back. And I didn't know how to be a mom. I managed to stay pretty clean and sober I would think, on the weekends, I might have had coffee with a little splash of Irish whiskey in it. I had a really good job. I got things back fast. I'm smart. I went to college. I got a degree. I got a good job at a moving company. I was an administrative assistant to the owner. And my mother still had a very strong bond with my son. And so we had joint apartments, and she raised him. And then my best friend had overdosed in 96. It was February. And at the funeral, she had no family. I arranged the funeral. And at the family, her boyfriend gave me a matchbook of heroin, and I was off to the races that night. So, for the next few decades, I was chasing heroin. I did get married. I've been married a lot. And, one of the times that I got married, I was 30. He was from another country, an Iron Curtain country, no addiction, never had a drink. I thought this was going to be good for me. I wound up having another baby. I had used the whole pregnancy, but I thought that I got smart. And 4 days before she was born, I cleaned up. So when they gave her, whatever they do, urinate the baby, you ate the baby, it was clean. And I got to take her home. And then I was just in Brooklyn on another run, and it was another baby my mother took care of. And I did that for a lot of decades. And my mother, I put my mother through hell. We moved to Florida together, and I went off and met another guy, insane alcoholic. We're both 40, and we decided to have, we had sex one time. I got pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
And it was so far along that I had to keep her. I don't regret it now. She's my daughter. She's my baby. She's 17. I'm 57. And that was 2005. My clean date is 2012. I can fast forward it to that if you'd like.
Yeah, we got time, sister. You just tell me what you think another person suffering needs to hear.
In between all of that, I lost custody of my middle daughter. She was 6. She went into foster care. My mother refused to go get her out. She was raising my son, who was like 12 at the time. The courts gave me, a stack of stuff I had to do, and I just couldn't do it. And my mother said to me, Gina, if you love her, fight for her. If you don't, let her go with the family that will raise her. And I did love her. That wasn't the point, I managed to fight for her, but not clean. I fraudulently did this. I beat the system, so I thought. And I raised my daughters and my son in complete chaos, driving under the influence, having accidents, leaving the scene, leaving home for weeks on end. I mean, I can't even imagine what my kid's story is to other people. I remember a judge one time telling me, Miss Arnold, don't ever think about getting into the education field, because not only can't you have your children, you're never going to work with other children. And I'm like, fine, I don't even like children. Today, my life is quite different. Parents trust me with their children. I could do family therapy. I have parents that are in the loop with the 18 to 30 crowd. My mother didn't make it. My mother passed away in 2012, which was very difficult for me. I wasn't sober, and my mother did not get to witness me draw a sober breath. And, all along, I had been going to meetings. My mother was going to meetings. My mother had found a way out, and I didn't get it. I expected her to still drink with me on weekends. That never happened. I was full of fear, full of self-pity. I was claiming diagnoses that they were giving me. I was bipolar 2 with suicidal tendencies, major depression,
everything else besides what it was.
Borderline.
Same thing, girl.
And I claimed these. They're like, you need your medication. Are you on your medication? Just on every medication you could possibly imagine. Always in an external attempt to fill a void within me. I did not have God. And, my attempt to find God was non-existent at the time, because that meant me, being accountable. And I wanted to continue acting out on my bad behavior. I wanted to continue blame shifting. I wanted to blame everybody else for what was internally wrong with me. I just didn't get it. I was abused. I don't know how live this is, and I don't know about the rest of my family watching, but there was things that went on in my family that, didn't make sense to me as a child, that I had no answer for. Just a lot of abuses, more than physical. In the long run, I overdosed on alcohol, believe it or not. I had overdosed, a lot of times on heroin, but my body shut down. It's only a machine. There's only so much. I remember drinking 3 Cisco's that morning. It's like a wine cooler. It's a very strong wine cooler. And my daughter, who was in 11th grade, they don't have lunch. It's like 8 to 2, right? 11th grade. She came home for lunch that day and found me DOA in the sunroom and called my son and said, Mommy's dead. Matter of factly, they told me this. And my son called the paramedics and they came and they, whatever they do, they tried to revive me. I was in a coma. I was in intensive care for a week in a coma, hooked up to all these machines. My youngest daughter was 6. Gia, Katrina was 15 or 16, and Joey was 22. And the doctors told my children, make funeral arrangements for your mom. She's not going to make it. And after a week, I remember pulling I couldn't breathe, so whatever, tubes were in my throat, I couldn't breathe. And then I pulled them out and they Baker acted me, which is they put me in a psych ward against my will for trying to commit suicide. I was mad. And when I got out of that, I went to the liquor store.
I get it. I totally get it. I totally get it.
Wasn't even my last time. I was so determined to make that work for me. I was like, that was my love affair. And it betrayed me. It promised me joy and happiness and relief and trust. And it betrayed me because when I drank, I was so super sick. My mother was dead. She had died on the couch from a stroke in the middle of the night. And I remember seeing her on the couch and she had her own room and the TV was on and I didn't go to her because I was withdrawing and I thought she was being quiet from me. And when I went in the morning, my little daughter came to me and said, Mommy, Nana's not getting up. And I knew. That was, there was no reason to go on after that because I wasn't a good mom. I was unemployable. I wasn't a good friend. And anyway, I lived. I didn't want to. Hopeless. I hope that painted a desperate picture of hopelessness. And it was October 1st. It was 6:30 in the morning and the birds were chirping and they weren't annoying me. And I used to dread morning. I wanted all night to just last. When it started to get light, it would freak me out. And they weren't annoying me. And I was homeless. I lost my kids. They weren't taken away by the state, but different family members stood in and took them away from me. I was living with some Spanish guy in a room and we were drinking. And he was abusing me physically and verbally. And I was walking around outside and it was twilight, dawn. And I said, out of desperation, if there's a God, like I'm going to need a sign. How arrogant, right? And I'm going to need a big one, by the way. And I got a sign.
Tell me about that.
I doubted it. I freaking doubted it. It was in my own voice and it was coming from above and it said something. And I was so desperate. I asked for the sign, the exact sign again, and I got the same sign. And I'll tell you what the sign was. Because I qualified for every anonymous program. I was in NA for 7 years. I qualified for them all. You can't go to AA because you don't have a drinking problem. You have a heroin problem. So I spent a lot of time in Narcotics Anonymous. The sign said, if you go to AA, they will save your life. And I was like, the first time in so long, my shoulders came down. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to AA. So I crawled into AA that day. I don't even know how I got there. Because the next meeting was at 12 at noon. And the meeting was packed and it was 205 pounds. My hair was matted, dreaded, because I couldn't even brush it. I couldn't even shower. I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. I had no more detoxes. I was that sick from alcohol and heroin withdrawal. And when they said, I don't know if anybody's been to a meeting, but they go like, who wants to pick up a white chip and start this way of life? My hands went up and I did not do this. So this is a walk of shame. And I picked up my last white chip that day. It was October 1st, 2012. And I never looked back, but I fired myself. I'm no longer in charge of my life. And whatever the God that I didn't have, I borrowed yours until I could find one and build one and trust. Because I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust. And I went through the 12 steps. So the relief for me came in the form of fast and furious 12 steps. And when I surrendered on that day, it was God's army, world, and swooped down and saved my life.
So did you get a sponsor that October 1st? How soon after you went to that meeting did you have a sponsor?
Okay, so I'm not real. It was October.
Yeah.
I went, so somebody from that meeting picked me up with my plastic bags full of clothes, my black garbage bags. I went and got one daughter, and my other daughter was safe. She was 6. I got the 15-year-old. We went to a women's battered shelter where they let us stay, where I was in the middle of nowhere and walked to meetings.
Oh, wow.
And I walked to meetings. I was there. She went to school. And the director of that program, who's still my friend today, Ms. Carla Doobie, she saw that I was really more of an addict than battered. And she fought for me every Friday to stay. It was a 4 to 6 week program. I was there for 5 months. So every day I would go to this one meeting and I would raise my hand. Hi, I'm Gina. I got 15 days, 20 days. And everybody laughed at me. I couldn't get 30 seconds. I was so proud of myself. And then one night I walked into a big book study and it was a guy. His name was Doug Williamson. I never heard the big book alive. So I wound up finding a way that he would sponsor me. And he said yes, but not on my terms.
Yeah.
He said, you'll meet me here, so that I know you're going to be there. And I did. And we did all 12 steps. And after that, he said to me, I said, well, what's next? I'm so excited. And he said, well, we're done. And I was abandoned. Like, once again, I was like, what am I going to do? Well, it turned out that it was okay. I got another sponsor who's still my sponsor today, his name is Eddie Pirro. He's from New York. That's a whole nother hour of how I got him. I had given you his information.
Yeah.
But I was sponsoring girls by step 6, and I'm just like Bill's story. I'm thinking, but I'm horrible. Nobody's getting sober. I'm running into trap houses by myself, crack houses, pulling girls out, trying to save the world, sponsoring the world, and it's not working. And somebody said to me, but Gina, you're sober.
Yep.
I'm like, I get out of V8, right? So then I get it. So what he said to me on the phone was, this is what I remember anyway, in the economics of God, it takes some of us to die so most of us can live. And then we hung up the phone because somebody in church had given him my number as support. I said, oh my God, that's my sponsor. And I called him back and he said, really? And I said, yes. And he called me every morning. We went through the big book word for word. Word for word. That book was alive to me. It wasn't about how to stop drinking. It was about how to live life on God's terms, because life on life's terms was killing me.
Well, life on Gina's terms. Life on Christine's terms. I get it.
It was just too much. I got the kids back and, I had to find an apartment. I didn't get a job till I was 2 years sober. How do you explain that? How do you explain how I survived? You don't. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. God carried me. People of AA carried me. It wasn't AA that saved me. It was God that saved me through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm committed. I'm committed to the commitment. I sponsor long distance, mostly. I prefer, because I don't have to get involved in all the drama. I'm a 12-step sponsor. I do have my favorites. I mean, they're my friends, my energy, my friends for life that I sponsor here in Broward County. They're sponsors. I'm a grant sponsor. My sponsor's a great grant sponsor. I sponsor in prison, which is really I can't tell you how humbling that is when COVID came out and they couldn't bring meetings in anymore. So my effect on sponsoring the people in prison affords them to be prison sponsors for the people that come in.
Wow.
I just find joy in that. I'm not under any illusion. I'm not confused about anything I have in my life is because I sponsor. I don't say no to AA ever. I'm not confused. I don't have time. Oh, I have too many sponsors. Never. It always amazes me when people say, oh, I have too many sponsors. I have 1 or 2 or 3. I'm like, okay. Why would I say no? Now it's their job. Reach out to me.
Right.
Half of them don't. Half of them want to sponsor a name only.
Meanwhile, people are dying.
People are dying. The reality is people are dying. I work in treatment. It's an everyday occurrence. I went to school. I was able to finish school. Well, when I first got sober, my son took me in. I lived with him for a bit. He's an amazing guy. He's got his own business now. He's married. I have 5 grandchildren. He has 4 girls and a boy. He just had a boy. So they moved away. I finally was able to get a job. I got a job as a tech, a BHT in treatment. And that was my first introduction to working with addicts, which interested me. I really like them. And I guess I have a magnetic person. I'm not really an extrovert. I'm an introvert that does things extrovertly. So while I was doing that, they afforded me the luxury of doing group. I taught big book study. It's what I do. And then I said, well, you know what? I already had an associate's degree. So let me go to college for the CAC. So I did that. And then I just kept going to school. I got a bachelor's in psychology. I got my CAP, which is Certified Alcohol Addiction Professional. I then went on to my master's. I got a master's in mental health. I then got my MCAP, which is a Master Certified Addiction Professional. In Florida, you have to do internship. It's different than other states where you can just go get licensed.
Right.
I did a 2-year internship with a family and marriage therapist, which was amazing. I got to do mapping, and I'm still running groups, and I did case management for a year. I passed the license test on the first try. I thought the guy was lying to me. I'm like, excuse me, you gave me the wrong paper. He's like, little short bald guy. He's like, is your name in picture on the front of the paper? And I'm like, yeah.
That's you.
And I left the door and I cried so hard. I had nobody to call. I have no grown-ups.
I know. Doesn't it suck to realize you're the grown-up? It's like, ew.
That's it. There's no backup. I'm it.
I get
So
that.
I called my daughter, and she was 16, and I said, she goes, Mommy, what happened? Did you have a car accident? And I'm like, I muddled out the words. I passed. It was just too much for me.
That's amazing.
So I'm a licensed therapist.
Gosh, does it even sound weird coming out of your mouth? It's like, who is this? Yes.
I have my own business. My business, and this came to me God came to me in my sleep, and I woke up the next morning. I remembered the name, and I wrote it down. Born to Connect. And I said, damn. I registered it. I bought the name. Nobody thought of that. What? So my company's name is Born to Connect. I'm a private individual therapist. I don't know. Things just came together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing to sit back, and I as well, Gina. I try to be cautious not to, revel too much in the good, because that can be just as bad for me as because I'll find a way to screw it up. But to pause and just look back and just think, how the actual hell did that happen? We know how it happened, but it's just like, because I don't know about, I do know about you. I can go back to the day before I had my epiphany. I can go back to that feeling in a heartbeat. And I'm so thankful that God hasn't removed the ability to feel that desperate darkness.
Right.
For just a moment, because I heard it, the analogy recently, we in recovery have to, if we're doing the deal, have to become so comfortable with our darkness that we're willing to go into someone else's and try to help them find their way out. Be that hand, that I believe, and I see that you believe, that it's God trying to reach them. Because for me, everything was so loud and so noisy in my life, I couldn't hear God. So it took an annoying woman, to go, hey, come this way. And I could hear her voice, who is still my sponsor today, because my sober year is also 2012. I was able to hear her voice when I couldn't hear anything else. And that's what the beauty of what God can do with us when we get in recovery. It's like, man, suit up and help me save some of my kids, man. I can just, what an honor. What an honor.
Well, I know for sure God's restoration is perfect. It might not be what I like or what anybody else likes, the misery and pain that we go through over losing a loved one. But God's restoration is perfect. It just means God needed them somewhere else. I'm not confused at all. I'm extremely disciplined, and it took a lot of discipline. I was very undisciplined.
Most of us
I let
are.
God discipline me in a very simple way outlined. This is the easier, softer way for me. So to just have compassion for others is key. I think you can keep their interest mainly by listening.
Right.
People don't want to talk unless they feel like they're being heard.
Right.
My sponsor taught me that. Everything I know, my sponsor taught me. I didn't know anything. I know I have to make it my own, but that's the truth. I'm able to be compassionate because I care, and I've been there, and I don't think I'm better or worse. And you can have fun in recovery.
Yeah, you can too.
Being sober is fashionable and fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Girl, I do remember, Rick, my husband, and I were talking about that recently, how I can remember it was within the first week of me getting sober. And I remember sitting at one of the tables, and someone said something about not ever drinking again. And I just thought, well, shit, my life is over. My life is over. So I'm texting my husband going, we will never travel again. We will never go out to eat again. We will never, just because I could not even begin to imagine going somewhere, especially going to some of the restaurants here in town that I had been thrown out of numerous times,
Right.
and not drinking. Why even go there? I mean, I didn't have a clue. I did not have a clue what a beautiful life I was missing out on.
My grandmother used to travel with a suitcase of pills, a literal suitcase.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even go on vacation because I had to go to a methadone clinic.
Right.
We
Right.
went to Vegas, and every morning at 6 o'clock, somebody had to drive me to a methadone clinic. You know what I mean? It's just bondage, complete slavery.
Complete
Yeah.
slavery. But there is hope. And
Hold on, pain ends.
Right. It's absolutely amazingly beautiful to see our mess be used as our message, and of hope for someone else. That just,
Yeah.
I just never, ever would have imagined that I would have the strength, because I got to tell you, up until, and it's funny, I was talking to some of my girlfriends about this, up until, because I turned 11 in March, and up until about 9.5 years sober, I refused to tell my story. I refused to sponsor. It wasn't, it may sound kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth. I wasn't selfishly doing that. I was not doing those things out of fear. I didn't want to screw anybody up by sponsoring. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was not strong enough to tell my story. I thought that I would implode if I talked about it publicly like that. I could talk about my sponsor and one-on-one all day long, but to get up and tell my story, and girl, God changed that. God changed that. I started sponsoring a couple of years ago, and so I am a sponsor, and I am sponsored still 11.5 years ago. I get to for the rest of my life. But just this past year, my sponsor's like, "Are you ready to tell your story?" And all of a sudden, and I don't think I made the words, but all of a sudden I said, "Yes, I'm willing." And girl,
Right.
that was I think it was in December of last year. And in February of this year, I spoke at the International Women's Conference, AA conference in Dallas, Texas, with thousands of women in attending. And then this podcast thing just kind of, it was, when you're willing and God is like, "Now let's go get some of my kids. Let's go help. Let me use you." Because he's a gentleman. He's not going to go where he's not invited. And when I finally invited him into those decisions, I mean, it's just been amazingly beautiful, as it has for you. I can't imagine the number of people that you have, that God has used you to reach.
Right. Well, the big book says sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right?
And it
It's
will always
very
materialize.
obvious
Yep.
that God was preparing your path.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go through to get to the amazing work that you do.
Thank you.
Everybody has their own journey and path, and I had mine. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not usually a speaker anymore, or but I want to let the newcomer know that this works, right? So I do have more confidence today. I'm not as cocky that I can save the world. If you want what we have and are willing to go to any length, then you're willing to take certain steps, and that's where I will step in.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are given bad information, and that's really irritating. In my opinion, and I don't often give my opinion, there's a minority of us doing the real deal in AA, and the rest of us are just like, "I'm not sponsorship material. I'll just make meetings," and that's not, the fellowship is not the program.
Right.
So it's a lot of, meeting guys and girls and just showing up and fellowshipping.
There are several meetings
And the real message comes from the few of us that are doing the deal, but that's okay. Whatever way, AA works.
Right. Just get in.
I don't know how it works, but it works, and I'm okay with it.
Right. Well, it's I don't know what I would do, and you're right. To get the beauty and to get all of the benefits of the program, there are certain facets that all have to be present. I mean, you can get sober, but to really live that life, just like it's a life of literature, of sponsoring, of being sponsored, attending meetings, and being of service. And when you put all those ingredients together, they just make something beautiful that works. Right. That saves. I mean, and God's able to show up and do things that I never thought I would draw a sober breath.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm worse or better than anybody else, but what I lived through was pretty bad. Way for God to get my attention.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm going to continuously make your life uncomfortable until you turn to me. And now I'm not, again, under any illusion that God's not in this world to serve my purposes.
Right.
I'm in the world to serve God's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I signed up for that. I'm committed to that. And because I'm committed to God and being a servant for God, he shows off in my life in ways that I don't feel like I deserve. So when I open my eyeballs, I'm like, what can I do now, God? What can I do now? I'm so excited about the day.
Mm-hmm.
My days are just jumbled. There's no time. I literally have no time. I wake up at 4, I'm running, I'm doing all of this till I close my eyeballs, and it's just amazing. It's just been a really wonderful journey, and I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with the way things, my hand,
right.
The hand I was dealt.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, how's your relationship with your kids?
Oh, so I'm still single. I got, as soon as I got sober, I got single. I stayed single. I haven't even been on a coffee date. I'm not complaining about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if guys are intimidated by me or what. I don't know. Maybe it's not time. I'm not sure. Maybe God's preparing the right person for me. Who knows? I'm open to that. My kids are my biggest support.
Okay.
My biggest fans ever. I have a wonderful relationship with my kids today. I got away with 2 really good kids. I was an alcoholic by 12, so my 17-year-old will be 18 soon. I'm always concerned. I see red flags.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always smelling a breath. telling her I work in treatment. Here's a piss bottle. So far so good. I don't know. I'm scared. I have a healthy fear of that fentanyl stuff. I'm like,
Oh,
you
gosh.
don't know what kids are going to parties and they're doing, I don't know, Xanax or Molly, and it's all kind of with fentanyl. And parents are identifying their kids who never did drugs or alcohol in their life at their lifeless arm. And, so those are my fears today. But she's good. She texts me and she's like, Mom, I'm not doing drugs and alcohol. And I'm like, okay.
Well,
I have to trust her.
And all you can do is educate as best you can, and then, she's, at the end of the day, just like you and I, she's God's kid, man. He'll,
That's been the biggest thing. I'm glad you said that because, believing in God is one thing, but stepping back and fully trusting and relying that God, you got this. Your plan is always better than anything I could ever think of possibly has been really disciplining. Yeah. It just takes a lot of courage and discipline, and I don't know. It was really bad. This is, like I said, this is just way easier and softer.
Well, and the good that you're doing. So tell me, how do you start your day?
So I wake up about 4 a.m. And I start my day off with a cup of coffee with God. And I have a dog, believe it or not. I bought the dog for my daughter, and in 2 days she forgot about it.
Oh.
The dog is a golden doodle. He's laying down over there. His name is Dude.
Oh.
And I was angry because she didn't walk it or feed it. And I said, well, you got to get rid of the dog then. And she said, no, Mom, you get rid of the dog. And I stopped and I said, wow, it's a commitment. And I'm going to keep the dog. So the dog just turned 1. And I watched a YouTube video that says 15 ways not to hurt your dog's feelings.
Oh.
And I said, oh my God. So now, me and the dog walk at 5 a.m. We listen to the birds. I don't drag him.
And you're not annoyed? And you're not annoyed by him?
At all. But this dog is the love of my life.
Oh, good.
The love of my life. I feed him. I cook for him.
Oh, my goodness.
I make him chicken and rice in the crock pot. I buy chicken livers. And everything I do revolves around, I got to get home and feed the dog. I got to get home and walk the dog,
That's good.
So the dog is my buddy now, my best companion. God, spelled backwards, right?
Right. That's amazing.
Such a gift. I'm going to make him a therapy dog.
Well, and that you can care for him and care for him in a proper way. And all the things that we didn't know how to do before. It's like I didn't know how to care for anything, let alone properly.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
This dog saved my life every day. He since the day I brought him home, didn't bark, doesn't crawl on furniture, doesn't scratch.
Oh, wow.
He's a golden retriever,
yeah.
And he's got a really docile personality. And it's a couple of $1,000s. I'm saving for it now. But they go to therapy school, and he could be a licensed therapy dog. So I can bring him with me to work, to hospitals, to cure terminal cancer, depression. I don't know.
You run a Facebook page that you post things about sobriety and recovery and stuff like that. Tell us about that page so people can find you.
Born to Connect. Yeah. So, my life is an open book. Nothing about my life is a secret.
Sure.
I'm not ashamed of being a believer. I'm not a particular religion. I do believe in Jesus Christ. I was brought up Christian. I'm definitely an all-inclusive person. I think that I sponsor Muslims, Jews, atheists, anybody really. Black people, white people, old people, young people.
Sure.
So there's no discrimination. This disease does not discriminate at all. So I started a business called Born to Connect. I have a lot of people that are on my side. They know I'm extremely dedicated to just posting positive things. What we're doing today, willingness, the willingness to go to any length. What length are you willing to go to?
Right. And it's Born with the number 2, right?
Yes, BORNTCONNECT.
Born to Connect. Okay.
Right. Having fun in sobriety.
Yeah. And being of support. Yeah, being of support with one another and
huge support.
Being that light.
I'm dedicated, but not as dedicated as Rachel. What does she have? 279,000 followers.
Yeah,
oh my
Added
God.
For the Purpose. Yeah, she's got a great page as well. Yeah, there's a lot of great support on social media. I think that it's very important to not to not think that that's the end all. I still will go to my grave saying knee to knee, person to person when you're new into recovery there's got to be those kinds of connections. But especially with COVID taught us that, we can connect in different ways, and
hey,
especially
modem, the big book talked about it, right?
Especially when, during COVID, liquor stores were essential, but we were told we couldn't meet, and that just put everything into perspective, at least for me.
I didn't think about that.
So yeah, it sucked bad. So anyway, well, I am so grateful to you. I think you're a rock star. I think you're amazing, and I'm so glad to have met you and have a sister in recovery.
Likewise.
Girl, I'm impressed by you, and just keep being the light, man. We just got to keep shining for those ones that are still lost in that darkness. For
Amen.
sure. For sure. All right, my sister. Well, you have a very blessed day. Thank you so much for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. You can find us in, we've got t-shirts that we sell that $5 for every t-shirt that goes to help producing the show at purposedrivensobriety.com. Check that out. Otherwise, we'll see you. Thanks, Gina. I appreciate you, sweetie. Have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I
Take care.
appreciate you too.
All right.
Bye-bye
Bye-bye.
now.
Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.